What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Striking Gold, your 49ers podcast on the Blue Wire Network. My name is Rob Lowder, and sitting next to me, if you are watching on YouTube, is the great, the wonderful, the man at NinersNation.com, KP, Kyle Posey. How was your Memorial Day weekend?
It was fun. Got to get outside a little bit, see the
Touch
outdoors,
grass?
be with the fam. Yep, touch grass, as they say on the internet. Not bad, man. No complaints. How about you? Did you get to do anything?
Oh, did we? Yeah, we did actually. Yeah, was that this weekend? It was this weekend. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, because my niece-in-law, who cares, graduated from high school. So congratulations to her. So we went to that, and then we went to a graduation, like a post-graduation dinner, and then the next day we went to a graduation party at the same place, and we went there in the morning to help out, and like it was a busy weekend, but it was fun. It was a good time. Just hung out with the family, hung out with the little guys. So it was a good little Memorial Day weekend. Poured one out for the guys that didn't come home. I had a couple of those. One I was friends with in high school. So try not to forget about the reason that day exists. But the reason today exists is segue to talk 49ers things. And how do you segue from that? You don't. So the roster rundown continues. So far, we have done quarterback, we've done running back, and we've done wide receiver. And today we are hitting up the tight end position and offensive line. So 2 groups with question marks, 2 groups with we'll sees, 2 groups with training camp business to shake itself out. We'll start with tight end. KP, well, hold on. Basic, who's on the roster? You got George Kittle. He is currently rehabbing from a very late season torn Achilles. Playoff torn Achilles, right?
Yes. Caused him to miss the Seahawks game because it happened in the Eagles game. So if you don't remember, he was in Jed York brought him some tequila in the locker room. Tequila. There was a scene about that. So that's
pretty cool, man. That's I feel like there's not that many things like owners are kind of pigeonholed. You know what I mean? Like there's so little things that an owner can do that's not going to get shit. You know what I mean? People just are so sensitive about owners, but bringing your star tight end a bottle of tequila because you just tore his Achilles in the playoffs is like that one's you're good with that one. Everybody should be good with that one.
You're going to be on the right side of a lot of people when you do that.
Right. So he's recovering. You know what? What's crazy is that's the second time a major 49ers player has torn his Achilles in the middle of a huge postseason game. You know what I mean? Like that's just some wildly bad luck. Also on the roster, backup and recently extended Jake Tonjes. Then you've got Luke Farrell, Braden Willis, undrafted free agent addition Khalil Dinkins, and Hayden Rucci. Shout out to Hayden. Didn't even know he was on the roster, but I found out that he is today, so good for him. KP, what are your initial thoughts on this group? No major additions, no major subtractions, and then they go into the season presumably without Kittle. I mean, where are we at on that?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I feel like the way everything's kind of been mapped out, been said, been talked about, is that Kittle's like, even if he does miss time, like he should be back in September. Like he's going to be back in the first month. So I don't know what to make of that because you can't talk about the 49ers offense without George Kittle. Like he is as big of a piece as Trent Williams, as Christian McCaffrey. So he's actually coming off a season where he's one of the most targeted tight ends in the NFL. And I know the 49ers improved the weapons around him, but just their numbers with him on and off the field is just stark night and day. They average 4.1 yards per carry, and like with him on the field. Without him on the field, that number dipped to 3.3 yards per carry. Their explosive run rate, easy for me to say,
was 11, really fast.
Was 11.2% with him on the field. Without him, cut in half, 5.8%. So, I mean, their running game, they just couldn't do much of anything. Without him, obviously, we saw what it's like when he's not on the field as far as just getting first downs in the passing game. So it does help, of course, that there are, like I said, the Stribling, Mike Evans, Rick Pearsall being healthy, Christian Kirk. So we'll see how Kyle Shanahan elects to navigate that. I was more surprised, though, by the extending Jake Tonjes, because let's say he does miss the first month and Tonjes does exactly what he does last year, where he made plays. I thought he was very serviceable for a tight end too. He, first downs, moving the chains, came through with a couple touchdowns as well. But what happens when Kittle comes back? So Tonjes is now on the roster through 2027, but Kittle's probably going to be on the roster through 2027. And let's assume Kittle is healthy when he does return for the next year and a half, year and 3/4, however long it is. Then what? What do you do with Jake Tonjes? Because when Kittle was healthy, he didn't sniff the field. Jake is what I'm talking about. So, what are they going to do there? Do you think is he the backup and backup only for Kittle? Are they going to try to work in ways where there are two tight ends? For what it's worth, the 49ers numbers with two tight ends on the field, they are extraordinary, which is why it's so mind-boggling that they don't go back to that. And I know they do a lot of two tight end stuff with Kyle Juszczyk, but I just feel like you get more with Jake Tonjes. I think here's a little hot take. I think at this point in the passing game specifically, Jake Tonjes can give you way more than Kyle Juszczyk. So why not use that player?
Oh, I thought you were going, because you said it was a hot take, and you're like, Jake Tonjes can give you way more than Kyle Juszczyk. I think that's true too. George Kittle.
Oh.
I was like, damn, KP, let's go. Get him talking.
I think as a player, though,
he's
really
respectable in the passing game. I
think Tonjes would be more of a weapon than Juszczyk.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any. I like I said, I was like, damn, is he really about to say that? But then you didn't say that. So, they signed Tonjes to a 2-year, $8 million contract. It's got 5.45 guaranteed. So you're assuming that it's kind of a 2-year, $5.5 million deal. A lot of that money is usually tied to some type of incentive or those types of things. But I mean, I like Jake Tonjes, man. I thought as a pass catcher, he did a really good job replacing George Kittle. And weirdly enough, when I looked it up on Pro Football Focus, I could look again, but I'm not that worried about it. He had one of the better run blocking grades of tight ends in the NFL, which I totally did not expect, because everything about Jake Tonjes has been, pass catcher. And he was, man. You can go all the way back. For some reason, I don't know how I found these things, but on YouTube, I found Jake Tonjes' high school highlights. That dude was just basically a big-ass wide receiver running around and just mossing everybody. And that's usually what any NFL player's high school highlights look like. They all did that, and it's usually at a position that they don't play in the NFL. I think Grayson Halton was like a quarterback and a running back or something. It's so weird. But I mean, Tonjes had 34 catches for 293 yards and 5 touchdowns. You don't just fall onto 5 touchdowns in the NFL. So one of them to win the game against Seattle, stolen out of Reek Woolen's hands. I think it was.
It was clutch.
So, he's obviously a good pass catcher. I'm assuming he's going to improve. Obviously, the 49ers gave him enough money to be like, okay, we see something here. And I've always loved the idea of the 49ers committing more to just 2 tight end sets. Like you said, though, it's a little murky with the 49ers because of Kyle Juszczyk, but I would love to see George Kittle and Jake Tonjes on the field at the same time. We don't know when we're going to get Kittle back, but just a couple of other random stats I stumbled upon. This was posted on Reddit, but it was apparently from The Athletic. With Kittle on the field, the 49ers averaged 1.5 yards per carry before contact. And when he was off the field, I'm going to read the whole thing. Before contact and ran for 151 yards and 2 touchdowns. Without him, they had 12 yards on 6 carries with an average of negative 2.1 yards before contact. So it says it's from 49ers Eagles. Oh, okay. So that must have been from the 49ers playoff game against the Eagles. So I'm going to read that one more time now that I got the context. With Kittle on the field against the Eagles, the 49ers averaged 1.4 yards per carry before contact, and they ran for 151 yards and 2 scores. Once he left that game with the torn Achilles, they had 12 yards on 6 carries with an average of negative 2.1 yards before contact. That's just it's a small sample size, but we know those stats live out there. You already talked about them in regards to George Kittle. Now the question is, okay, so I think he had. When exactly did he have his surgery? Was it
Ooh,
still in January? I
I'm
think it
pretty
was.
sure they were. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was either the week after, like leading. There were, I think there were questions about him even going to the Seahawks game because of that. So I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure it happened
Okay.
within a week.
Yeah, January 19th, there's an article from ESPN that says they did the surgery on Kittle's Achilles last week. So it was mid-January. So let's just count from there. February, March, April, May, June, July, August. September is 8 months. October is 9 months. You know, where are we at in the NFL world for somebody getting back on the football field from a
Yeah.
torn Achilles?
Yeah, and obviously we're talking about the elite of elite athletes, and Kittle is no stranger to injuries. Unfortunately, he's also going to be 33 in October, so he's no spring chicken. But still, I remember coaching in Iowa City. We got to watch the Hawkeyes practice, and he was still in college then. So back there, you can see like all of his athletic achievements, and he was like number one all time for tight ends, and they do their spring training. So 40 vertical jump, like all those athletic testings that happen at the combine. So like seeing him put up
He
those
set
numbers, like
athletic testing records for Iowa.
yes, like
That's
he's the
cool.
best of the best. Yeah. Another person who the 49ers fans should be familiar with, CJ Beathard, side note. He was also an elite athlete. He was, well, no, I could do a whole tangent on there. Anyway, I'm assuming that being, an S tier athlete, you're going to be able to recover quicker than most. So with that in mind, maybe are we talking about, October is the expectation? So I don't know. I do know though, whenever he's on the field, he's as productive as it gets. He is one of, if not the best tight ends of our generation. You could just read so many numbers. Advanced stats love this man, and how could you not? So here's one from Next Gen Stats. This was as of week 18, so for the whole regular season. Despite missing 6 games last season, George Kittle led all tight ends in receiving yards over expected. So plus 156 is what he had. 49ers quarterback, so Mac Jones and Brock Purdy, had a perfect 158.3 passer rating when targeting him on throws 10 plus air yards over the season. He was tied for the third most downfield touchdowns. He was top 10 in most downfield yards. And honestly, since 2023, I believe he's number 1, and it's not really close in yards down the field. So like that, how could you turn the page on something like that? Like Kittle, I feel as long as he has one Achilles, he's gonna be a threat. So I think you want to be careful at the same time, right? Rushing him back. We're talking about one of your most important players. You're talking about a focal point on your team. So it's way more important for Kittle to be rolling come November, December, during that stretch of the schedule where we're all talking about, as opposed to like if he's not there in Melbourne, whatever, so be it. The next 2 games you should win with or without Kittle anyway. So maybe by the time they play the Seahawks win, that would actually make a lot of sense, right? When hey, let's come up with a date, and maybe that Seahawks game is the game that he's circling.
Right. Sogras said 6 months isn't unheard of, but given his age, I wouldn't expect Kittle to be back to the Kittle we know until the year. I'm assuming you meant the year after this year. If he gets back to what he was at all.
Which is generally the case, right? You're usually better a year removed from the injury. That's a good point. Which is why the expectation is that Malcolm Mustafa is supposed to be like his rookie year now that he's a year removed from the ACL injury.
Yeah, so I'm in no way. I don't think Kittle's. I mean, obviously, I know people love that talk. Like it wasn't that long when we were hearing about Brandon Ayuk being ready for Week 1 after tearing every ligament in his knee. And I know that everybody loves that story, and I'm not saying it's impossible, but I think it is highly, highly, highly unlikely that George Kittle is playing against the Rams in Australia. And if I had to guess what happens with Kittle, he gets put on the PUP list. That means he's going to miss at least the first 4 games, and then you go from there. That's what I'm going to assume has happened. I'm not going to, and if he comes back for Week 1, then my goodness, the Kittle legend grows. I combined Kittle and legend into one word, Kegend. So, I mean, the question from there goes, I guess the final question when it comes to tight ends, can Jake Tonjes have the skill set to weather the storm as the Kittle replacement in the meantime? Can Tonjes and Farrell do that? Or do you feel like, I mean, I was looking at the free agent options at tight end, and they're not very encouraging. Yeah. So it almost seems like the 49ers have no choice but to roll with who they got and hope for the best.
And maybe this is why, there was talk about Kyle Shanahan running more 10 personnel, more 4 wide receiver sets, because, hey, if you're going to be spread out, you might as well get your best players on the field. But I think it's also more of an indication why they drafted Stribling, knowing that he's going to be in the fit, right? He's going to be in the formation blocking. And without George Kittle, we just read the numbers of what it was like without him, which is not new at all. When he's off the field, they just haven't been able to run the ball for whatever reason over the past few years. So maybe that's where Stribling comes into play. So still don't think so. Still think it's going to be Tonjes on passing downs, Kyle Juszczyk filling in for him on early downs as a run blocker, and obviously just window dressing, motioning all over the place, trying to move people around, get advantageous matchups.
Cal Chipto said Deshaun Stribling is tight.
Probably. He did it at Ole Miss, for real. Like, he was a tight end. He was fullback. Would not be surprised. Hey, man, Pearsall on one side, Mike Evans on the other, and then Stribling's a Suedo tight end, even though he might not line up as one.
I've watched as much Khalil Dinkins as I can watch out there. I like him. I like his skill set. I think he's a pretty well-rounded. He does a lot. He's a good blocker. He's a good athlete. He's got decent hands. He wasn't used a whole lot by Penn State. Last 2 seasons, he had exactly 14 catches, 122 yards, then 167 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So obviously he wasn't very involved in the passing game. But what I could see from him, I thought it was actually pretty encouraging. 6'4", 225. It wouldn't surprise me if he made a run at a roster spot. And it's not like the 49ers have a lot going on at tight end. Sograz said, Jaden Duggar, learn how to speak tight end, buddy. That would be a thing. That would.
Can we set the stage for that? Okay.
Yeah,
OTAs, Jaden Duggar makes this wild interception, right? Picks off Curtis Warwick, and then you're like, whoa, this dude can make those kind of plays? Let's put him on this side of the ball. And
tight ends coach like, here, man, later, grab the sticks. Grab a stick.
Right. come August, come July, when training camp comes in, instead of wearing whatever number he is now, I forget off the top of my head, they give him an eligible number. Now he can catch some passes, and they got the new Kyle Pitts. No reason to sign Kyle Pitts because they drafted Jaden Duggar. Everybody's talking like, is Jaden Duggar a safety? Is he a linebacker? Is he an edge rusher? And got it all
Kyle's
wrong.
Like, gotcha, bitch.
Yep, got it all wrong. I'm throwing tuds to this guy.
Yeah, I mean, he is a freak athlete and a freak just person, a freak individual. So it would be fun to see. At the very least, it would be fun to see.
To your point, though, Dinkins has an opportunity, right? Like, he has a really good opportunity to not only make the roster, but contribute because of that. So if he can show that he's athletic enough to hold up against the run, like to be able to maneuver to the second level, just do all the ins and outs of blocking that it takes, and then show that he can separate in one-on-one coverage, show that he has hands, because you think about it, it's Kyle Shanahan's offense. He's going to be open. Like, that's the most maddening thing when we're talking about tight end 2 for the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th year in a row. Like, all these dudes should be open theoretically. So I'm fascinated to see what a guy like Dinkins, because if he has an ounce of athletic ability, he should be able to do something.
Right. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting little bit at tight end. Obviously, Luke Farrell, who was brought in what seemed like to be that extra pass protecting tight end, had great pass protection blocking grades coming in, and he just had a really, really, really rough season. Couldn't get his feet under him, run blocking, just couldn't pass protect like he had been able to in the past. And then, everybody just remembers him attempting to catch the football and immediately fumbling it, and then looking very disinterested in attempting to recover that fumble. So, and I get it. Stuff happens fast, but there's just some opportunity there. If George Kittle starts the season on the pup, then you got Jake Tonjes as tight end 1. Braden Willis is just kind of hanging out. He's been hanging out for a few years, never really been asked to do very much. Maybe somebody put something on his plate this year, but maybe Khalil Dinkins and Braden Willis are coming for Luke Farrell's spot. In terms of contract-wise, I remember at one point looking up Luke Farrell's numbers and whether or not they could part ways with him, because they gave him a decent amount of money, probably more money than they should have gave him. But hey, that stuff happens. But
yes,
Kyle, anything else?
Than they should have gave him.
Right, that's what I thought, but I don't have. I do have it here.
So yeah, he's under contract for 2 more years. His contract is void come 2028. So after the 2020 7 season. He's pretty much going to be on the roster. It would cost them.
Yeah, he has a $7 million dead money.
Yeah, it would cost them nearly $3 million this year if they were going to cut him at any point. Next year it becomes a little more salvageable and a little more manageable.
They could do a post June 1, but it's even then you're just kind of kicking stuff down the line.
It's like $1 million for what? So unless he's just unplayable as a blocker, special teamer, which might be the case, and if Dinkins or one of these other young guys is cheap enough, you could make that move. But I think that it's pretty clear that they want a veteran that they can trust, and that's where Farrell would come into play.
Right. Anything else to leave us with on tight end? I think we covered it, right?
No, I think we're good. It's just it's
George
all
Kittle
about Kittle. Yeah, it's all about Kittle.
Yep. Okay, next on the list is the offensive line, which is, as always, an interesting position for the 49ers right now. Loaded. It's a big group. Got Trent Williams, obviously, signed a new deal. Daniel Brunskill at center, Dominic Pooney at right guard, and Colton McKivitz at right tackle. And then behind them,
you said Daniel who?
Daniel Brunskill? No, not Daniel Brunskill. Why did I say Daniel Brunskill?
Jake Brendel.
But I like Daniel Brunskill. Bring him back.
Throw some shade.
Bring Daniel Brunskill back. That must have been like a little slip right there. Like, just bring him back.
I'm pretty sure he was starting with the Titans either last year or the year before.
Dude, he's the isn't that the Aaron Donald killer? Wasn't that Daniel Brunskill? Or was that?
Damn it! Yeah, it was. Which he wasn't.
Or maybe it wasn't.
Like no, it was. Brunskill had like 1 or 2 blocks on Aaron Donald, and everybody ran with that. Like, this is the guy to shut down the future Hall of Famer.
Just have him follow him around. Jake Brendel was who I meant to say. And then behind those guys, you've got Connor Colby. You got some action last year. Robert Jones, who they brought in free agency. Vidarian Lowe, another significant free agent addition. Brett Toth, interior offensive lineman. Austin Pleasance. Carver Willis, their 4th round draft pick. Or 5th?
Yes.
4th. Enrique Cruz, their 5th round draft pick. Nick Sakelj, Drake Nugent, Isaac Alarcon, and Zach Thomas. So significant additions wise, I mean, that depends on your own perspectives of what you deem is significant. I also don't really think they had any significant subtractions, but significant additions. You've got Robert Jones, who is expected to be in the competition for left guard. Vidarian Lowe, who was brought in from the Patriots, who's a competent both left and right tackle. That's probably their swing tackle of the future, I would assume. Brett Toth, formerly of the Eagles, was brought in to compete. And again, they drafted Carver Willis, guard center-ish Carver Willis, and then tackle Enrique Cruz with 4th and 5th round picks. So what's that group say to you, man? What is your, I feel like you've always had a more positive opinion of the offensive line than most. But where are you at with this group, man? How do you feel about it coming into this year? Better, worse, decent?
I think they're a good group. I thought if we're breaking down the offensive line in units last season, this was one of the best units on the 49ers, like in general, not just offense. They were very good last season, I thought. I would argue that the other skill positions made them look worse than they were. Not the quarterbacks, but I think the wide receivers and sometimes the running backs left yards on the table or whatever. You can slice however you want to, but I never got the takeaway thinking, oh, man, like the 49ers, like their offensive line is really costing them here. Like, sure, there are moments where they got overpowered. Like people are going to name the Seahawks, and the Seahawks did that to them twice in the past or in the final parts of the season. It happened again with the Texans. It happened with Vita Vea and the Bucks. Oh, you mean the best players in the NFL?
Sograz brought up the Seahawks right as you were saying that.
Right. So, like, if that's going to be the bar, you can do that for every offensive line, but across the season, over the course of the season, like Brock Purdy had plenty of time, Mac Jones had plenty of time, Christian McCaffrey had plenty of holes to navigate through. So, I never really felt like the line was the issue. The line was the part of the offense that was holding them back. Of course, injuries are going to make up for that. I thought when you're talking about just the additions this season, to me, these veteran additions tells me that, all right, if we get into a situation where we don't know what to do at left guard, which is what happened last year, we are absolutely not going to let a 7th round rookie be the one to bring us down, drag us down, hold us back, because that's kind of the situation they got into last year. So when you talk about Brett Toth, when you talk about Viridian Lowe, when you talk about Robert Jones from the Cowboys / Dolphins, like they are probably going to be the ones to step up. And if, in my mind, if Carver Willis is starting, then this guy is the real deal. If he's able to beat out a bunch of veterans and just start from day one, like Dominic Pooney did, like that would be, as good as it gets. But again, like that, to say just because Pooney did that, we shouldn't expect Willis to be able to do that. Pooney was an outlier in my mind. He was just outstanding from day one and never really looked back after the Spencer Burford injury when that happened. So I think they're set up for success with the veterans behind the starters, whoever the starter at left guard ends up being. So it's been a revolving door. How about this? Do you think the 49ers are doing it wrong the way they are leaving a revolving door at left guard? Or should they invest in a draft pick? Maybe they already did. Maybe that's where Carver Willis comes into play. But in my mind, I see Carver Willis as more of a, I don't want to say dart throw, but the 49ers are viewing him as a Jake Brindle replacement because contracts matter in the NFL, and Jake Brindle's contract is up after the season. I believe he's 33 or 34, so probably not going to get another contract from the 49ers. In my mind, redshirt year for Willis, and they're going to see what he can do behind the scenes, practicing against Alfred Collins, Osa Digizua, all of the D linemen that the 49ers have, and kind of gear him up for center next year.
That's a good question, though, asking about the 49ers' approach to the offensive line. You mentioned Dominic Pooney being great right off the jump. I knew the 49ers thought he was going to be good because during his rookie training camp, you were there too. I asked Chris Forster, the offensive line coach, about Dominic Pooney and how he was doing, and he just lit up. Like he was just like, it was like a father talking about his son playing football, and the dad's like a football coach. Like he's just so excited for him to be there. And he said something to the effect of, well, I really, really like him, but I'm not going to crown him yet. And I was like, oh, okay. So he really, really likes it. Like he's trying to hold back his love for Dominic Pooney.
Trent Williams said he'd be an all-pro. Like he said he has all-pro potential, and he never talks about guys like that. Oh, he will never gas up a player. So for Trent Williams to say that was eye-opening too.
Yeah. So, and that's when at first where I kind of had the first clue that the 49ers were really expecting a lot out of Dominic Pooney, even as a rookie. But when you asked about the 49ers approach, I wouldn't necessarily say it's wrong, especially it's hard for me to just be like, they should have signed a guard in free agency when you start seeing how much quality guards are being paid now in free agency. Like, aren't they eclipsing $20 million a year at this point? I believe they're getting, if they're not eclipsing it already, they're getting close. Right. So I feel like it's a solid group. And yes, the goal is to be able to, if the goal is to be able to stonewall a defensive front like Seattle, like that's how do you do that? Like, where do you start? You're replacing your center, the highest paid center. Like, what's his name? The big time center this year get paid. Wasn't it close to like 30?
Oh, it was up there.
The Raiders signed him.
Off the top of my head, but
I don't want to just, I know this is not great. Tyler Lindenbaum got $27 million a year. Okay, so let's say, boom, you got to do that. You've got an opening at left guard. Like I'm talking about, if you're really going to try and build a line that can maybe overpower a defensive line like Seattle, which is really almost, does that even exist? Is there even an offensive line in the NFL right now that will just consistently beat up on a Seattle defensive front?
Well, based on how the NFL went last year, the answer is no.
Right. And like the year before that, was there an offensive line that was going to consistently beat up against that Eagles defensive front? Nope, not really.
And like the Texans were doing the same thing. The Broncos were doing the same thing. Like they were beating the hell out of each other. So like we are talking about like elite units, like as good as it gets. I would even go as far to say borderline historical units.
Well, and the Bears last year, the Rams, Sogras says the answer is the Rams, to be fair. The Rams had other ways to beat Seattle. Right. They had receivers were unguardable, and they had Matthew Stafford. And I'm sure their offensive line was
Sean
McVay
played well. Decent as well.
Yeah, so it's a complicated. The thing that I'm trying to push back on a little bit is, everybody talks about building an offensive line that's capable of taking on the best defensive fronts. Well, just think about the money you'd have. And I'm not even saying it's a bad investment, but okay, let's say you knew that you needed to get, if you wanted to compete against Seattle, you had to get rid of Jake Brendel, which I'm not even saying it's the case. So, okay, you sign a Tyler Lindenbaum, or you can even say a Creed Humphrey, which is $20 million a year. Tyler Linderbaum, $27 million a year. You've got an opening at left guard. Let's sign the most expensive, let's sign a premium left guard. I mean, the Bears, didn't they make a whole bunch of investments in their offensive line before last season? And the 49ers still beat them. You know what I mean? And the 49ers had a makeshift defensive front. You know what I mean? So it's an odd relationship. It's not an easy solution. You know what I mean? I'm just trying to push back on the idea that there's a very simple way to go about it, when I don't think there is. And I think the 49ers have done a decent job. Left tackle, Trent Williams. Right tackle, Colton McKivitz. Might be one of the better tackle tandems in the NFL. Probably top 5. Even with Trent Williams at 82 years old. Dominic Pooney, an up-and-coming right guard. And then your 2 question marks is, can you get better than Jake Brendel? And who's going to win out on left guard? So it's a complicated, you're looking for a complicated solution to a complicated problem. So there's a lot of work to do. Left guard's the biggest question mark. Jake Brendel, no matter what you feel about Jake Brendel, he's there. He's the clear leader. Maybe somebody competes with him during training camp. There are some names on here like Brett Toth, or even Carver Willis that might be in some sort of a mix. But again, I still expect Jake Brendel to be far and away the favorite. Who's competing at left guard? What are the names you feel like are actually in that competition?
I think it's going to be Robert Jones to lose. I think they brought him in because he played under Mike McDaniel's system and flourished under Mike McDaniel's system. And guess what Mike McDaniel's system is? Good guess. So with that in mind, he has to be healthy. He hasn't played football in a year, and that matters. So he might have to shake off a little rust. But I think finding that consistency from a veteran, finding someone who's been there, who knows how to play the position, is going to go a long way for the 49ers, which is why I don't think it makes sense to kind of throw Willis in there, which, of course, again, if he's good enough to play, then of course you play him. But to me, it's going to be Jones, and then we're going to see guys like Willis. We're going to see guys like Tooth or Toth. But after that, I don't know.
You should call him Brett Tooth, man.
I might. I really might from now on.
I mean, that's fantastic offensive lineman name, dude. This is Brett Tooth, our left guard. Yeah. Back up.
Connor Colby, Nick Zakel. And we've seen both of those players on the field multiple games. I know Colby was a rookie, but he looked like a rookie. Not only a rookie, he looked like a 7th-round rookie. So with that in mind, if Jones did not come to the 49ers under the impression that, oh, man, I'm going to have to sit behind these guys, to me, that doesn't make sense. And I know their contracts don't suggest that they're going to be starters, but they're going up against day 3 rookies and sorry, not day 3 rookies, but day 3 draft picks who haven't looked like they belong. So to me, it's probably Jones. And that's really the only question mark, because I think across the board, I know people hate Brendel, but I think they're pretty solid across the board. So as long as Jones is just consistent, he doesn't need to be an all-pro. He doesn't need to be Mike Iupati. That's not what he needs to be for the 49ers to be successful. He just needs to be consistent, not do the same boneheaded mistakes that got the 49ers in trouble. But even that said, I can point to 15 plays in the biggest games over the course of playoffs, where you want to talk about Super Bowl, NFC championships, where, again, sure, the offensive line is going to be popular to hate, but there's so many other plays where they left on the field. So I've never really felt like the offensive line cost them, which goes back to the conversation of, are they doing it right? I would always take the skill guy. I would always take the guy who can either sack the quarterback or score a touchdown, and then trust my system, which is the Shanahan system, to get me over.
I'm just reading up on Robert Jones right now, something I probably should have already done. But following the 2020 NFL Draft, Jones signed with the Dolphins as an undrafted free agent, made the roster, made his NFL debut in Week 2 of 2021. Then he said he got his first NFL start at right tackle on January 9th in 2022. In 2023, Jones was placed on injured reserve, but was activated on October 14th. I'm not sure what that injury is. And then he signed a 1-year deal with the Dolphins in 2024. And then he was on the Cowboys last year, and he signed a 1-year, $4.7 million contract, but he suffered a broken bone in his neck during training camp, and that was the end of his season. So there's a little bit of, and he signed a 1-year, $2 million contract with the 49ers, so close to vet minimum. There's a little bit of a question mark as far as like, is he going to be hurt again? Can he stay healthy? You know, he was on injured reserve in 2023, and then he was on injured reserve again in 2025. Now, a neck injury is nothing to scoff at. We don't know how that happened. It's not like a soft tissue injury or something like that. He's not like a Ben Barch type of thing where it seems like every time he gets a chance to get on the field, he gets hurt. But you know, there's some question marks there. I think Robert Jones should be the favorite. And again, like he's had experience in a scheme like Shanahan's, he should be the favorite. But there's a chance that you know injuries continue to plague him, and then somebody else has got to work in there. So, you know, I don't
think
know
they
if it's
want
Brett
him to be
Toth.
the favorite. Yeah, I would just say they probably want him to be the favorite. And if it turns out another direction, that's why they've supplemented so many positions behind him.
Yeah, you got Brett Toth who can do guard and center. You got Carver Willis, their rookie, 4th round rookie, who can do guard and center. And then you've got Connor Colby, who I don't know what kind of how he's going to look. It wasn't phenomenal, but again, you're talking about a 7th round rookie just being thrown into a starting spot on a whim. So there's a chance he takes a significant step forward. There may be people in the building that feel like Connor Colby might be the favorite. Like it just depends on how everybody feels. I feel like Robert Jones is the favorite, but again, you've got a little bit of injury history there that just makes this interesting. It makes it interesting. But the 49ers obviously had an emphasis on bringing in guys with a little bit of position versatility, guys that can play left guard and center. It makes it easier to keep guys on the active roster too, when you feel like you don't have to be too specific about who's backing up which position. Something we haven't even talked about yet, Trent Williams signed a new contract, a 2-year deal. I had it pulled up on Over the Cap. I'm just going to read what they put on here. Trent Williams signed a 2-year, $50 million contract with the 49ers in April. $48.5 million is guaranteed. $22.2 million signing bonus, and his 2026 salary. In 2027, Williams' base salary is $11 million. I don't want to get too much. I'm trying to find. The team has until September 1st to exercise the option or convert it to a roster bonus. This is in 2027. If Williams is on the roster on September 1st of 27 and does not hold out or miss any offseason time, he will earn an $11.5 million roster bonus in 2028, which is interesting because 2028 is a void year. So it must just mean, they're giving him guarantees in the future, or maybe if they want to even add a year to the deal. There are 1, 2, 3, 4 void years. The 49, there are effectively 4 void years for salary cap purposes, and the contract is designed to have a post-June 1 treatment in 2028. So it's another 2-year deal. If you want the really simple brass tacks, it's 2 years, $48.5 million. That's what's guaranteed, and then you kind of go from there. It was interesting. I don't know if I've ever heard of a what do you call it? Like a no holdout contract stipulation, shenanigans contract.
It's as specific as it gets, right? You need to be here during these dates, or else we will not pay you. We know that you've done this before. We are not going to put up with this again. So knock it off. That's what the contract reads like, which makes it like we were talking about this before we got on. Now we are crossing our fingers that Trent Williams just holds out like another day just to show them like who's boss, right? I still run this. Relax.
Yeah, I put on my notes and said, how much you want to bet that Trent Williams holds out anyways? Because it's Trent Williams.
Can't wait.
He just does what he wants to do, and he knows the 49ers still have not necessarily done anything to replace him. Now, and this is Sograz was the nice little lead in here. Austin Pleasance versus Enrique Cruz for that last tackle spot is interesting. I don't know. I don't know if this is exterior or interior, but I've heard a lot of people say that the 49ers like their 5th rounder Enrique Cruz like a lot. And he's a very, very athletic tackle with a lot of upside. And I don't know if it's everybody else choosing to be excited about him or if that trickled out from the building that they really, really liked. Obviously, you drafted him, so you liked him. But, maybe that is the first little piece. And, yeah, it's a 5th rounder. I don't want to get too pumped up about him or expect too much out of him. But maybe that's somebody who the 49ers keeping him on the roster for the 2 years that Trent Williams has got left on his deal. And then that's the guy you plug in for him because he's a freak athlete at left guard. He ran what did I think you mentioned it before. Didn't he run over 20 miles an hour on the field at one point? I thought it was you that mentioned it.
He would have been like the fastest player on the 49ers last year.
That's crazy. If you didn't catch what KP just said, Enrique Cruz, their 5th round offensive tackle, ran faster than anybody on the roster with the ball in their hands.
Always a good sign.
Right. So there's your tight end 3 or 4 right there.
There it is. There we go, right there.
Throw that man the ball.
Well, here's what we need to talk about. Is this the year that Trent Williams catches a freaking touchdown? Because it hasn't happened yet. And there are going to be plenty of times because we know the offense is going to move the ball. Kyle, what are you doing, man? Throw your boy the ball.
As he's mentioned that quite a few times, hasn't he? About wanting to catch the touchdown pass.
Sure, yeah. Like he's not been shy about it. We can definitely acknowledge that.
I mean, run an end around with him. Like, I figure out like, okay, eligible to run around, but you can't just hand the ball to an offensive tackle, right?
What you would do is you would either have him you'd have him on left tackle, and you would make it so he's the last one on the line, so he's the eligible wide receiver.
He's the eligible man.
You roll out right, you do the throwback, or you do play action and you throw it all the way across. Like there are plenty of ways to make it happen. It probably has to be fast. There's some plays where you do the long roll all the way out and throw it all the way across. You don't want to do that, but I don't know. I feel like there are times he has a target in his career. I'm pretty sure in my mind it's the Jaguars game from a few years ago where he had a target. But yeah, make it happen, Kyle. Come on, throw the boy. Get your Hall of Famer a tud.
I mean, we've already seen how wild it is for Trent Williams to be on the move. It would be funny if they could just get him the ball in space and he's got 5 yards and it's heads up with some safety or a corner. And it's like, let's see how this works out. Trent Williams.
If it was just that would be even better, right? So week 18, nothing is on the line. You're going against the Cardinals. Just split them out, throw them a fade. Come on, man.
Just have him run a slant against some poor corner that's stuck behind him, and he's just looking.
How
at
do you
Trent
get around
Williams'
that
huge number in front of him? He's like, I don't know what to do, man. Yeah, I would pay a lot of money to watch Trent Williams run a slant against somebody. That would just be hilarious. What are you gonna do? Press him? How's that gonna work?
Good luck, man.
Right. So, I mean, we're not doing a roster prediction right now, but I feel like it applies. It's interesting to take a look at for the offensive line. You've got Trent Williams, you got Jake Brindle, you got Dominic Pooney, you got Colton McKivitz. Let's keep Robert Jones and Vidarian Lowe. So that's 6. Are we going Connor Colby and Brett Toth?
So and this is
8.
where we get into the veterans. So I think we can assume
because you still got Carver Willis and Enrique Cruz chilling. So,
and this is where it's going to be tricky, right? Because one of those guys you're going to try to have to sneak on the practice squad, I think, and that's going to be Cruz. I think because, like, who are you going to leave off? Like Toth? No. Jones? No. Lowe? Probably not.
No. Yeah, they gave him a bigger deal.
But at the same time, there's no guarantee that Colby makes it. So maybe Cruz.
That's true.
Cruz is so much better than Colby, who, yes, he played last season, but he's also a 7th rounder, and he gave you no reason. I know they said we're confident he started 6 games, yada, yada, yada. No, we all watched him play. There was a reason that they were losing those games. And like the one weak point of the offensive line was when he was on the field. Like they just didn't look like a very good unit with Colby on the field. So unless he takes a drastic jump, which is he can, man, it can happen. Anything can happen. I would feel safer assuming that Colby is the odd man out as opposed to somebody else. And at the same time, who do you think you could sneak on the practice squad more, Colby or rookie Cruz? In my mind, that would be a 7th rounder.
Yeah, I would say it right now. If they try and sneak Enrique Cruz onto the practice squad, he is going to get swooped up. And that has happened to the 49ers a couple times as of late. Most recently with their 6th round pick that ended up getting picked up by the Titans, I believe it was. I can't remember his name right
Drew
now.
Moss. Drew Moss,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure he was like starting too.
Drew Moss was one. He was an undrafted one. It was let me get his name. Somebody's going to put it in the chat before I can find it because you guys are smarter than me. And you should be here and not me. But I'm finding it. Hold on. Jarrett Kingston. Yep, Jarrett Kingston. Immediately got swooped up. So I think they're going to remember that. I don't think they're going to try and do that with Enrique Cruz again. There's so grouse with the Jarrett Kingston. I knew that was coming. What else we got on here? I think that kind of wraps up our offensive line, does it not?
Does.
Yeah, there's going to be some competition there. Again, like we are just talking about, Connor Colby competing with Robert Jones, who might be competing with like Breck Toth, who might be competing with like Carver Willis. You got Enrique Cruz competing with like Isaac Alarcon, Zach Thomas, Connor Colby, like not really competing with Vidarian Lowe because that's a swing tackle. But again, I think that they'll try and keep both Carver Willis. Fourth rounders make the roster. Like if you're cutting a fourth rounder, he's getting swooped up. I think the Carver Willis and Enrique Cruz both make the final roster. They've just got some shuffling to do after that. I don't think Nick Kells is on at this time. So, all right, I think we did it. That's tight end. That's offensive line. It is Wednesday, so the next time we will be on here is Monday, and we will be transitioning to the defensive side of the ball. I'm assuming defensive line, which we could probably. That might be a solo pod in and of itself. We'll see. Yeah, might just combine defensive line and edge rusher, then just talk about it. So, yeah, that's a fun one. KP, any closing thoughts for our tight end and offensive line discussion?
No, I mean, I would just say the offensive line is a lot better than the perception, and I don't think the offense would be as successful for as long as they have if there wasn't that cohesion. And as far as the tight ends go, I think it's, man, are we, and maybe we should have talked about this more, but are we underestimating the fact that, is it too much of a shoo-in to assume that, all right, it's Kittle, he'll be fine, it's okay. Because if not, that can open up a can of worms that I'm sure Shanahan wants nothing to do with.
Yeah, it's a huge can of worms that goes way beyond just that position. Like we talked about, Kittle's ripple effects on the entire team are significant. So it's not just about who replaces Kittle. It's about Kittle's impact on the roster and the fact that it's just not there. And that's tough, man. The 49ers are going to have, they're getting little experiences of life without Kittle, which is eventually going to become a reality. So, but just don't replace players like that. Hall of Famers, man, they only come around every so often. But all right, everybody. Appreciate everybody hanging out in the chat. Appreciate everybody listening on the podcast. Everybody that's here right now, make sure you are liking the stream. Make sure if you're not already subscribed, make sure you're subscribed. If you're on the podcast listening, you should know by now that we got a YouTube channel. Come on over here. Like, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. It helps the channel grow. We're moving slowly but surely. And again, we will be back on here early next week to talk defensive side of the ball, starting with defensive line. So I appreciate you guys for hanging out. I appreciate you guys for listening. You already know what it is. For another episode, I'm Rob. That's KP. This is Striking Gold, and we are signing out.